All right, we're gonna go one more again on this one. Hit the like button, subscribe. If you feel like contributing to the virtual tip jar, please, by all means, you guys can, cash up. So we're just, we're just sort of trying to see if, I'm trying to bring I guess, the business part of the show. So yeah, so it's cool. Um, so So this episode is I'm going to be talking about the one time I worked on Jonathan Major's first. Um, let me backtrack. It was the first time uh, that I worked on a movie starring Jonathan Majors and my experiences with that. So this was 2022. I worked on this particular set for 3 days. And Jonathan Majors at the time, no, this is before he got in trouble with allegedly assaulting a white woman and kind of did bad things for his career. Um, so, so I was working on various shows. I got to the union in 2021. 2022 was sort of one of the busiest years, and I was working on shows, and so we passed my number, and I got a call to be on this particular movie. I didn't know Jonathan Majors was, I didn't know he was on it until I read the call sheet. So at the time, we went to Crafty or whatever, and had a meeting um, um, with the AD and everybody. Okay, so what was going on was we were going to shoot on two locations, and but because of gang activity, they lost one location. So we ended up shooting in the parking lot for the duration of the day. Um, so it was simple. We added some, I believe, some S360s, or as a so we could bounce the light off of the um, we had a vehicle that was towing um, the picture car. We had some interior lights. Um, yeah, we had some smaller lights, some smaller LED lights. So it was just very. It wasn't a big big budgeted film. It was really an indie project. Um, but Jonathan Majors was playing a bodybuilder. Is pretty much kind of the whole summary. It's Jonathan Majors. He's playing a bodybuilder, and it's really like dramatic, right? I didn't know, Magazine Dreams right now, it went on, to win top awards at Sundance, and then it's also available on demand and rental on Amazon Prime as of right now. Um, so this movie was really, really interesting in the sense that um, this was, the second movie that I worked on was somebody that I was really interested. I really like Jonathan Majors. Um, you know, uh, he was going to be King the Conqueror, and he was. I also knew he was going to be in Creed 3. So at the time, he was in the best shape of his life. Um, I worked on a show for 3 days, and one of the locations was after we wrapped um, in the parking lot. I believe we were shooting in Van Nuys, and then we shot in downtown LA uh, at a theater, because it was the scene where he's a bodybuilder, and he's showing off, for the judges, and kind of reminiscent of when Arnold Schwarzenegger was coming up. Um, so yeah, I really gravitated towards some of the it looked really interesting. But what struck me is, like I say, was a lot of the lighting was very LED centric. Um, so we were definitely, there were things like, when when he is working out, the photographers would have their flash bulbs. Those are practical. Um, and then um, I believe those were extras. And a lot of the spotlights, we did a lot of, follow spotlights. Uh, we use a lot of Lecos. We use Lecos to sort of focus the light on them. It was very, very, very cool. And I believe that set ran. That was a good 12-hour shoot day. That was a long shot. That was a long day because after we set up, then we had to because we went up to the highest part of the theater, and we were you know manipulating lights and that sort of thing. Um, so you know uh, so yeah, it was interesting seeing like a lot of that. The actors were you know working out and um, but like I say, the crew, we really hustled. Um, and in between, we were working sort of a lot of the behind the scene stage work. So it was a really really tight. It was a really good set. Everyone was really really hustling. You know, um, and I believe the third day we shot at a residence in Reseda, I believe. It was a nice residential location. It was a house. It was a private residence, and it was sort of the scene where Jonathan Majors stays. And so we set up lights in, I guess, in the backyard. There were, I believe, they're motivated, it was like street lighting. And then it was a scene where he comes out, and as he's jogging, he's stopped by the police. Um, so, what's interesting about these locations is like, you know, it it's just very interesting because it's like you could be driving around anywhere in Los Angeles, and these locations would be like just innocuous, like you wouldn't think that this location would be somewhere where we would be shooting this particular movie. Um, and that was really interesting because I think my memory from that is like, you know, it was a pretty big crew, and we were um, PAs were blocking off the streets, and parking I think was really a thing because we had to accommodate the residents that live there. Um, but I remember it was really we had problem getting access to certain parts of the house. Um, and then, like I said, I think probably the most I would say rap was probably the most kind of the more difficult because I remember we there was a particular a stereotube that we couldn't find, and yeah, we were all over the property looking for it. Um, but it was a practical set. I mean, one thing I'll say, I'm normally used to working on sound stages, but this was a whole location. This was like a real location. Um, and then and then and I believe I think yeah there was a fourth day, and we shot in North Hollywood, and it was like one of those things where like everyone parked. It was a school across the street, and then the shuttle would take us. Seemed like it was this retirement community, and this was even smaller. This was a studio apartment, and I just remember it being kind of this was a tough shoot because so the gaffer wanted a stereotubes because it was a very neon looking shot. It was kind of like a kind to like a neo noir, I would say, whereas like there's like a nice combinations of reds and purples and oranges, and it was a nice, it was a nice little vibe look to it. Um, and with these, like I say, we didn't get the script or the sides, but I just remember sort of the toughest thing of this is like the location was up some stairs, so it was on the second floor. So all day long we had to, carry like lights and equipment up and down stairs all day long. And I think that was probably, you know, the the kind of tricky, you know what I'm saying? And then we had a courtyard where our staging area was. And so I'll say for anybody trying to do an indie film the proper way, even like there's no, because well, because I do want to shoot a film at some point, but again, even the smallest budget still has kind of still has a budget in order for it to be functional. Because we utilize staging rooms, staging, and there was costume, and there was makeup, and there was so like I said, if you have a chance to check out Magazine Dreams, it was I can't speak on the budget, but I will say that my experience with that film was what's different about that particular film because I think it was a fall under tier two or tier one, and you usually get paid by using what cast and crew, and it was this new particular system um, platform that we got paid on. I can tell you probably what it is. We got paid on oh my goodness, what was it? Uh, Green Slate. Exactly. If you never heard of Green Slate, because cast and crew and entertainment partners is usually pretty good, right? So Green Slate was the platform, and I think, like I say, I ended up getting paid like 2 weeks later or whatever. But yeah, for that gig, uh, that was, I mean, I'll tell you, because like one thing I do is I keep a spreadsheet of, when I get paid. So on that particular job, um, I'm at a rate of $23.83, right? For working on the Jonathan Majors movie one day, $486.18, right? And then the next day, it was $486 um, with um, then we worked overtime. So that was like what, $872.39 um, because it was yeah. So it was one day. So yeah. So basically, remember when I said about the theater and that went late? Yeah, that was so $800, and then and on the last day, $522.18. I just wanted to demystify sort of the that's kind of what you would get. So so you look at certain jobs, you know, um, those were good times, um, that as far as like working, working on a production. So um, I think I probably was a little disappointed to realize that I didn't get a credit in the movie, although I worked like 3 days on it. Um, I did went on and still added myself to the IMDb, and it's still on my IMDb. But you know, ultimately, um, with everything that went on and all that, and it's just like I say, with these things, it's like the crew just picks up and moves on, and kind of is what it is at the point. But yeah, so I will say that my experience working on Magazine Dreams was really interesting, and I will say that um Jonathan Majors, like really didn't have any interaction with him, but from what I could say, he was a nice guy. I mean, he was well, he was articulate. treated everybody on the, from what I've seen, everybody on the crew with respect. Um, so after he got into the trouble that he did get into, and I think I did see the young lady that he got in trouble with on set. Um, it surprised us. It was unfortunate, for the film, particularly for the director. Director, was a up and coming, you know, director. He had some hits, on sort of film, uh, the film festival um, front, and yeah, so no, this was going to be his biggest film, and it got delayed. Eventually, it's come out, but I think this will do some really good things. Um, so yeah, so I would say that's the highlight. That was one of the highlights of 2022 was working on Magazine Dreams. So so yeah, so I got some um, really good interview coming up uh, this weekend. Stay tuned for that one. And thanks for checking us out. Take care. Peace.